Hello, welcome to Shine Love and Light On. I've got beautiful Libby Chow with me. Libby and I went to school together, and today we're talking about shining love and light on women's stories. Libby's a journalist, a media specialist. She's had 20 years working in video production and online spaces, and is now part of a beautiful team of women called She Listens, and they're creating storytelling around menopause, which is a really passionate topic of mine. As host of this podcast, I'm really interested in women talking about things that are taboo and hidden and unspoken. And then in my roles as co-founder of Wild Beauty and Pleasure Alliance and founder of Discover Your Wild, I'm really interested in women exploring what it is, in their heart, in their souls, and following those callings to be a bit wild, to go back to our kind of natural, innate, cyclic being. And yeah, storytelling's part of that. And I'd love to hear from you, Libby. Thank you for joining me today on,
Yeah.
yeah, a bit about yourself and your history and how you've come to be a storyteller or in the
Well,
storytelling space.
yeah, no, I think I just like capturing people's stories and lives, be it by photographs or video or recordings. And to be honest, when I reconnected with you, I was drawn to your love of, uncovering taboo topics and things. I thought, oh, she's just like me. I love that stuff. So yeah, I'm all about hearing other people's stories, telling other people's stories, being part of that collaborative process. And so yeah, I've become involved with a film that is about sharing women's stories, and it happens to be about where we're at in life, which is in our 40s, and women who are a bit older, in their 50s and even older than that, because I love to mine women of all ages and ask them their stories and experiences, so I can get more prepared for what the future holds. And yeah.
So, what do you think is it? Usually my first question in these interviews is around, why is it we're not talking about certain topics? So, what is it that's so hidden or shamed or taboo about them? So, why do you think, say, women don't necessarily share stories about these important sort of life transitions and stuff like that? Or if they do, why are we not hearing them?
Yeah, well, I think first of all we feel ashamed about the stories because I recently posted something about my first experience of really, I guess, menopausal symptoms. And I haven't really had many, but it was about mood and anger. And, anger is a really taboo topic with women, especially, I think. We just are not allowed to feel those big feelings. It's very unladylike. It's very threatening. It's very ugly. I don't know. There's just a lot of us. It's put upon us that we're not allowed to be noisy.
Mhm.
So there's there's that, and then there's the body changing. We're meant to stay beautiful and young and lithe and energetic and positive and nurturing and juicy and all those things. And we are not able to. No one is able to. That's just um, it's just the natural aging process to for these things to shift and change, and not necessarily be a negative experience, but the stories that we are told constantly by the media and by movies and books, and is that it's a negative experience that we should avoid talking about, and preferably avoid experiencing if we can, with whatever forms necessary, with whatever medication or whatever it is. Like, so yeah, I think we're just not encouraged. And I think that when you don't hear the stories, you then don't seek to tell them. So I think that's the thing. As soon as I see anyone, I mean, that's the first thing I do when I experience something. I Google it and go, oh, who else is feeling this, or what else is going on in the world? And I found an article in the Guardian, and it was about 2 years ago, and it was a woman, and she talked about feeling these feelings of not wanting to be as mothering as she had. And I thought, wow, you just don't read about that. And it was really reassuring to go, I can be a mother and loving and still feel these feelings. And, so it's just about seeing other people doing things, seeing that you'll be accepted for feeling differently to what the current narrative is. Yeah.
So that's it, isn't it? Like the narrative that's been portrayed largely through, I don't know, almost a fairy tale through to, novels and stories that we're shown has a perspective that we should look a particular way, like a good girl or a, um, nurturing mother or whatever. And then there's that other side to life that's not necessarily portrayed. And it's really great that you guys are giving women a voice. And I think some of it too is some people, I know from my own experience, it's quite hard to speak up about your own stories or your own experiences for that reason. Like, how am I going to be received? And so for someone to even write and put it into the media is like that whole next level, isn't it? It's to be able to even have that skill to publish something, but then to have that kind of confidence, I guess, to know that whatever they put out is and how it's received is independent of their experience. So yeah, I think the way you storytell and the way you encourage the stories to come up has to be done in such a way that allows someone to speak their truth, really. And how are you finding? So maybe we could pause there and go back to how you came to be in this collaboration and even interested in this topic, because I know there's more to it around how you felt angry and then you went looking and found Guardian article and went further, which has opened up this whole kind of creative process and collaboration. And we talk about that, and then I'll go back to where I was heading.
Yeah. Well, so yes, I had this little incident where I was pretty upset about some pasta sauce that my daughter wanted for lunch, and it was ridiculous because it was pretty much feeling like I hadn't been heard. I'd sort of tried to preempt this situation of endless cooking in the kitchen by sort of saying, let's make lunches in the morning and, almost treat it like a normal school day. And, this, of course, did not unfold the way I was hoping. And then I felt pretty upset about it. It was a very big reaction to a pretty small situation, given it was about a jar of pasta sauce. Went for a big run and had a big think about it. Just was like, why am I so upset? Like, what's this all about? And I don't think I'm the only woman in the world who's gone completely nuts around something small. And you kind of just go, there has to be some reason. I mean, there is some reason, because ultimately, not being heard's not a nice feeling. But then I realized it was out of proportion. I went back home, did some writing, did some researching, found this article, realized I wasn't alone, realized there was a thing called perimenopause. I don't even think I'd even heard of it. And this is only a year ago for me, like a year and a half ago. And I know it's exploded, really. The whole perimenopause thing has really exploded in the last year or so, really, for me. And maybe that's because I'm more aware of it, but I just think a general zeitgeist is brewing. And I also just started talking to my friends. So we'd go for walks on these lockdown days. We'd have these lovely creek walks with all these different women. First of all, I spoke to my shiatsu therapist friend, and I just quizzed her for like an hour and a half. And she was just fantastic, because she's older. She said she's been through it. She said, well, if I had known, and I'm a health professional, and I didn't know, I wish I'd known, and I would have made my journey and my transition a lot smoother. And I thought, wow, if she's saying this and she's a professional in health, like, this is crazy. So, and I started talking to all these other women who were saying, oh yeah, I'm having these headaches, and I'm having these hot flushes, and I'm having, sleep trouble, and I'm having relationship issues, and I'm having this. And I'm thinking, oh, there's just, people are crying out for information, and people want to share their stories. And so I just organised some Zoom sessions with friends, with first of all my friend Jen, because she was actually out of work, and I said, well, what about, this can be a bit of work for you. And so everyone just paid about $10 each, and we did this online Zoom with her, where she gave all her advice on, how to handle the symptoms and what you can do lifestyle wise. And then there was an opportunity for people to talk within that Zoom. So this was the very first one, and then we had about 3 others, which were all my friends of different areas of expertise. One friend, Shay, who's an amazing somatic body worker, spoke about her early menopausal experience in her early 40s. Another friend spoke about her experience with HRT and how positive that had been for her, and how that actually integrated with her mental health and her family situation with teenage children. I mean, everyone's got different circumstances and situations that they have to work with. So just getting this sort of spread of exposure to people's experience within these Zoom conversations was really enlightening. And it was really just a beautiful thing over lockdown as well, to connect with women and share our stories and our confusions and our questions. And that led to my lovely friend Vanessa, who actually lent me her Zoom account for these gatherings, to talk about not formalizing it so much, but that she and her friend Sarah had been thinking about women's circles and seeing the hunger for them in these Zoom rooms. She said to me, well, Sarah and I've had this idea, and it was actually about a play in the beginning, but then she said, well, maybe because you're a filmmaker, you could help, we could make a film together, And then we just started talking, and we talked and then got talked to the Women's Trust, Victorian Women's Trust, and they've given us some funding to begin the process of making a film. And we ran more Zoom circles with women that were more designed in order to facilitate people's stories, not so much having an authority or a therapist, more so just a space in which to share. And Vanessa and Sarah are really good at that. They come with that experience, whereas I come from a media background, not so much of a therapist facilitator background. So so the 3 of us have these really different skills, but they've married really beautifully together. And out of those Zoom circles that we ran at the end of last year, we chose 8 women to interview, which we did in between lockdowns earlier this year. And we have then edited together a film that's about 25 minutes long. And the aim of this film is to use as a conversation starter, I suppose, for hopefully for in-person women's circles. And they can be in corporate offices, or they could be at community centres, or they can be in your living room. That's the dream at this point.
So it's this beautiful collaboration. I heard, different skill sets coming together, and the evolution of, a seed that can be planted through just being curious, which was you being curious about your own experiences and what can open up creatively when you go looking. But I mean, I've had similar experiences when I've thought, hang on a minute, I'm in my 40s. I'm pretty switched on. Like, I'm interested in, and I read, and I went to university, and I never heard the word perimenopause.
Yeah.
I grew up, lucky I had a mother, who was alive and living and went through menopause in front of my eyes and did not know of what the hell she went through. Like, it was I think some sort of hormone replacement therapy, and that was it. Maybe some hot flash to cut, overhearing something about hot flashes, and that was it. So it was really, this part of our life isn't, until you kind of slap bang in it and wondering, am I in it, or what's happening? There's, I mean, in my personal experience, certainly around menopause, the first time I remember hearing it was my obstetrician saying, well, if you leave your marina in, you can pretty much avoid menopause and you won't even notice it. And I was thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe that's a good thing. I don't even know. Like, there wasn't even an awareness of what was, there's just no understanding. And it's my mind boggles actually that we are all just walking around blindly. wondering what happens. I mean, I had a conversation, anyone who's listening and would like more, I had a conversation with Barbara Fitzpatrick Hattie about this because she's a women's yoga teacher and she has a real interest in it. And we were talking. And I mean, even in that conversation, I think I learned for the first time that menopause really is kind of a definition of you haven't bled for a year. Like, that's a long time. You know, so there's this sort of whole year of you waiting. Has it happened? Has it happened? Like, so of course this is this huge, like, it's not sort of one day happens, oh, it's done and move on. This is a huge kind of process that our body's moving through, and we don't have any role models. It's just not available. So stories and films like yours will be lapped up, I'm sure, certainly by people I know, just hungry for, like you said, real experiences, different experiences. And I've been in women's circles for up to 5 years now. And what I love about them is everyone's different, and there's no hierarchy in them of someone knows more than the other, whether you've been through it or not. You've all got something that you can relate to in everyone's story. That's the beauty in sharing stories. You can go, oh, I've witnessed that, or I've seen that, or I feel that, or I understand that. And um, yeah, it's such a gift. And then something like we've talked about too, it's so hard to share a story. So, to have that skill set in your collaboration to allow those women to express their vulnerability and experience for the benefit of others is really amazing too. And
Yeah.
how's that experience been, sort of witnessing those stories being told?
Oh, it's been a total joy. It's been such a joy to, and people are so generous. I just think that the generosity of sharing vulnerable experiences can't be underestimated, because it's your life that you're sharing, and you're putting yourself out there for people to judge. So it is really big. And I'm really hugely grateful to all of the women who turned up, just to the Zooms generally, but especially those who agreed to come and be interviewed.
Mm.
And I know that for a lot of them, it was also a really important, powerful time for them, because they were heard, and they were able to sit in a space that allowed them to articulate, what they were experiencing, and it was dedicated to that. And I think that there is just no spaces that are dedicated to hearing our stories generally, but especially when it comes to stories around the intimate nature of our bodies and our transformations, which is what came up a lot. That this is a transformational time. It's not just an inconvenience. It's not just a thing to fix. Sure, headaches and sleepless nights and hot flushes and a whole lot of challenging stuff comes with this perimenopause, potentially, not with everybody, but a lot of women. But the beautiful thing that came out of a lot of those women was it was a time to reflect, a time to just honor what it means to be aging and how lucky we are to even get to this point in our lives. Many generations of women didn't even make it to menopause. So, but like you said, I'm thinking back to your talking about your mother. Like, there's a generation who's just been before us that didn't talk about it. And so we seem to be this first generation who's talking about it. And that's going to be really interesting for our daughters, because we learn from each other, and we have to. That's what's sadly been missing. And I think a huge part of the collective in She Listens is like, we need to tell women's stories, because women's stories have been silenced, and I mean, it's apparent when you see something like Misrepresented by Annabelle Crabb, or it's so prevalent still. Like, we think we live in this really progressive situation, but sure, there's lots of great things and lots of change has happened, but we've got a lot of work still to do. And really evident when you start hearing women speak from their heart, and you go, oh wow, great wisdom coming forth here. Let's just get more of that out there into the world. And I know that's the work you do, Penny, too. So it's really exciting. It's really exciting that there's more movement in that area, and and it's definitely a desire for it. So
Yeah, because what I'm hearing is, and I've interviewed Sarah, and so for those of you who've been listening, Sarah and I talked about the birth process, and a lot of our discussion was around that kind of lost wisdom that women have had this, and it's there's evidence of it in historical artifacts and things that women did collectively come together and drum and obviously support each other around the birth and of um, children and in community, and that sort of community connection's been lost, and that's sort of when it becomes really apparent when we go through these life changes. I mean, birth and menstruation and menopause are big ones, because I mean, I know when I had children, how you're on your own. You're kind of like thrust out into the into the world, and sort of, oh, you might get hooked up with a mother's group, but even then, it's just a different world, isn't it? And so now to be able to have um, women's circles coming back and conversations and community and sharing and holding space. It's not about it being right or wrong. It's just being heard. Like you said, we're thirsty for this sort of experience, just to be witnessed, to be seen and held and valued for the experience that we're going through, and that to actually know that it's not wrong. Like, I think so much of it is, oh, because if haven't seen anyone else do it, something must be wrong with me. This
that's
must be
right.
normal. Because if it was normal, surely everyone would be sharing it or talking about it, or um, and I guess because they're bodily functions too, there's a high level of embarrassment about it. I know friends that have, talked about having hot flushes, in a corporate setting, and they're a boardroom of men, and they're like, starting to strip off layers, and to have to explain that to someone, like what is going on, and
Mm.
isn't the easiest thing to do. But if everyone in our community was to be aware of it, and I also had a conversation around aging, and there's so much of aging where we try to hide it and suppress it and push it down and avoid it because it's like something's wrong with us. Wouldn't it be really beautiful if it was actually embraced, and it's like our second spring and rebirth and all these amazing kind of exciting things? I wonder how much those symptoms would actually abate, and if we were not trying to repress them.
Oh, totally. I think there's a lot of energy taken up with having to
Hide
repress
it.
stuff,
Yeah.
feel bad about it, or in that culture of the office. I had a friend contact me about this project and said, oh gosh, I love this work because she said she was in a meeting the other day, and she's suffering from lack of sleep, and it's affecting her mind, and she's not coping very well, and she tried to bring it up at work, and she said as soon as she said the word perimenopause, she heard an audible from someone. I don't know who exactly, what gender or what, but she felt so dismissed and so judged, and it was just awful. And I thought, you know this is the thing. We have to educate everybody, and the more you talk about something and normalize it and bring it out in the open, and also celebrate it, like you say, because it's actually a beautiful thing to be getting older and wiser, and you know becoming an elder, because that's kind of what it is.
Mm.
um, and when we can really own that stuff, then maybe other people will respect that as well. I don't know, I'm not sure, but it has to start somewhere, doesn't it? This kind of
I think,
changing the story, the narrative, the
yeah.
yeah.
And look, it won't be one size fits all anyway, and everyone's going to experience it differently. But it's certainly in the conversations that I've witnessed, um, there's a relief in being able to share a story or to be able to hear a person's experience and go, okay, so that might be explaining why I'm forgetting things or I'm feeling, like you said, angry, or like there's a sense of, oh, okay, well, that's all right. I've got to work with that. And a lot of the stuff when I spoke with Barbara, it was around, she called it radical self-care, this
Mm.
idea that as women, we kind of might even need huge periods of our life to kind of pause, you know, take a step back, um, retreat, whatever the word you want to use, but to kind of give our body a sense of catching up or changing gears. It's like, if we're a car, you can't change gear when you're speeding along. You've got to,
Mm.
um, yeah, give yourself that space to change gear and permission. And I'm really excited that you guys are sharing this story.
Yeah, well, I mean, having listened to the stories of the women that we've interviewed, it's actually, I've taken on a lot of their advice, or not that it was advice, but just lived experience. I'm just decided, baths, candlelit baths, they're something I love. And for some reason, I thought they were way too indulgent and didn't do them, just like maybe once a year. But now I'm like, I'm having them like 3 times a week at the moment. Like, well, why not? It's not a big ask. It's not a big luxury, but for some reason, it takes sort of others. It's like giving each other permission, to do beautiful things for ourselves, to take care of ourselves, and it just has really positive ramifications on everybody. It's only a good thing to do a bit of self care um,
And what I'm
yeah.
hearing, because that when I hear of like candlelit bars, it sounds so feminine and so beautiful. And that's actually one of the major things that's missing in our society is the feminine and that sort of going with the flow and really relaxing into and receiving and indulging, like you said, and sort of asking, I need this time, I want this time, I deserve this time, I'm worthy of this time. And that's something, yeah, you do need to kind of witness other people doing it to give
Mm.
yourself permission, I think. And hearing beautiful little ways that people are doing it gives you inspiration. So, effectively, your stories are that you're sharing are giving us all inspiration about how we can move through these different years coming up. Or if we're not, like I said with Barbara, if we've already been through it, being that kind of sister in the community for other women, holding space, sharing, explaining to other people we work with, that's what people need, that's what women need, that's what our daughters need. Both of
Mm.
us have got teenage daughters, to be able to guide them through a different way is pretty exciting for us.
Ah, yeah, absolutely. And having teenage daughters, I mean, I know for me, you know, I and my family, my husband and my son, who's 11, we're all pretty educated around menstruation, and we're all pretty um, on board with the fact that she's experiencing hormonal highs and lows. I mean, they're very evident. And I also am experiencing hormonal highs and lows. So, I mean, we didn't know, there wasn't like anybody saying at school, let's talk about menopause for the mums. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so that's, I guess, what I'm feeling is like, we need to have everybody on board, because when I have a hormonal high or low and I'm, not easy to live with for whatever reason, I can now say to my family, I'm just having a crazy little hormonal situation and it's not personal. And everybody's like, oh, that's good. So everyone relaxes into whatever. We have to live with each other's prickly parts. So, and that is, the beauty of understanding and talking more and so not going crazy, because you're not going, oh my God, I'm on my own feeling like a lunatic because I've got anger over pasta sauce. Actually, it's because I had a drop in estrogen or whatever it was, or I wasn't sleeping, or you know, whatever. So I just, I can see how it's working for me anyway. Not having brought it up more in my life and around with my family, and it just my husband, the first time I mentioned the word, oh my God, you should have seen his face. He was like terrified. And he's a really, lovely human. And he's not, I mean, I don't think he's that 1950s, but I do think
Well,
it's a
hey, if we don't
hard
talk
thing.
about it, how on
Yeah.
earth are the guys going to
Well,
know, right?
exactly. That's right. That's right.
Like, we're at least a bit more likely to talk about it with people because we're in it.
Yes.
So, or we might know someone who is. And yeah, for them, it's a big mystery. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-boggling how mysterious it is because I
Mm,
think also another thing which for women is we're so disconnected from our body. We don't
mm,
listen to the cues and notice or have, and it's no one's fault, but we were never taught how to, well, I can pretty much say how to monitor my own cycle. I wasn't aware that my cycle had a different temperature at different parts of it. No idea.
no.
People might only mention that if you were trying to get pregnant and know when you were ovulating, but it was definitely not something that, yeah, and cervical mucus and all these other things were never mentioned. So
No.
when you're at the other end of your cycle, how on earth are you going to know what's normal and what's not? Because you didn't even take any notice. So it's just this, it's quite mind boggling how, we're expected to kind of know what we're going through, to be even able to explain it to other people and say, because for me personally, I have no idea. I don't actually know where I am in this whole picture.
Mm.
you know, one time I'm bleeding, the next time I'm not. Don't really know if that's because I had a marina in for 10 years and I'm still like reeling from so many
Yeah.
different, hormones from that. But that was like, what, 15 months ago now. So am I actually in perimenopause? So there's this whole world of just
Yeah.
not knowing. I don't feel like I have symptoms, so maybe I'm not, but
Mm,
maybe
mm,
I'm just managing my self care
mm.
really well so that who knows, right? So this is my
Yeah,
experience. Um, and
that's right.
someone else can be, yeah, hit with it. I know also a friend who worked, in corporate and was just highly stressed and just thought it was that. She just thought it was her job, stress, 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 stress. And then actually went, oh, something else hit her that, oh, I've actually gone through menopause. Whoops.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and I do think listening to the body is a big part of my curiosity, because I guess, I wasn't aware of periods and what I mean, I was just not even aware of anything. Like, I feel like I was on the pill when I was in my early 20s, and then, you know, so didn't really have a cycle, or wasn't particularly punctuated, and also we didn't have apps like Clue. Like, now we've got an app. I love it. I use it all the time. I track my moods and things, and that's really, really helpful. But we didn't have any of that before, and we just certainly didn't have the information. And so, but from a health perspective, I've always like preventative health. So I'm a big Chinese herbal I loved use Chinese herbs to manage just colds and flus,
Yeah.
basically. And that's been really amazing for me. And with my kids, I've just been able to ward off all kinds of things before they get serious, because preventative medicine in Chinese medicine is quite strong. So I just apply that across my life and sort of think, well, when I had that, when premenstrual tension became sort of bigger, I thought, well, this is not necessarily just being, I mean, it might be more so just because of my cycle, but it definitely felt like it was getting a bit bigger every time. And even now, I know when my life is stress free, I don't really suffer
Mm.
as much. If I'm getting enough sleep, if my work isn't too crazy, if everyone's happy in the family, I don't really feel those things. But as soon as
Yeah.
things get stressful, then my symptoms do come up. So yeah, I think I think we have been disconnected from our bodies through all kinds of reasons, and one of them is just not trusting our bodies. And so through storytelling, I think there's an element of listening in that you have to do in order to tell your story. So I
Mm.
think that is also a lovely, it's actually something I just thought of then, really, is that becomes part of the process. You start telling a story, and then you start observing yourself more, and you go, oh,
You have to notice, yeah.
You have to notice things in order to tell the
Mm.
story. So yeah, and I just think the allowing of the story is the biggest part in the beginning, because I think a lot of women still are very resistant to wanting to even go there because it's sort of a bit scary or a bit unsexy potentially.
And a
It
little
doesn't
bit
have to be.
shameful, isn't it? Like I still
Yeah, the
think there's
shameful.
a bit like, what if I'm going through it and no one else is, and then I look a bit silly or
Well, people don't want to even like, so I even found myself putting that word menopause on Facebook really challenging. You know, at the beginning I thought, isn't that interesting? I don't want to associate my name with this word.
mm,
And I know that that's not, I'm not alone in that. And
mm,
I even from the beginning, when we called the project Giving Voice to Menopause, that was just a holding title. We didn't know what we were going to call it. And then we thought, well, that's what it is. And, you know, most of the problem is because we don't say that word, because we think it's an ugly word, because we think it means all these things. But we have to reinvent what this word means. You know, we have to keep
reframe
talking
it.
it
Yeah.
and owning it. And yeah, it'll change and evolve with, you know, it may take 50 years. I don't know. I don't know,
Well,
but
we're starting here.
yeah, got to
You're
start
starting.
some
I
point, don't
think maybe that's where I'd love to go. Like,
you?
how do we shine love and light on this storytelling element? Like, how do we? I mean, one way would obviously be to support your film and watch it, but how else can we, maybe in our own lives, do you think, start this process of telling our own story? Is it journaling,
Oh
about
yeah,
self or?
yeah. That's a lovely, yeah. No, journaling's always, that's been a practice of mine ever since I could write almost, I think. Although, you know, I feel like I don't do it as much anymore just because of being busy. But yeah, journaling is a beautiful place to start, especially if you don't want to share it necessarily into the world. But I do think bringing it up with the people that you're closest with, and, you know, just with your family or your friends, just experiment with bringing it up, bring up the word. I mean, it will be potentially challenging, and but I think it's fun to play with. I think, you know, just play with it. Go, you know, women go through this thing called menopause. They go through perimenopause. Have you heard of that word? Have you heard of perimenopause? I don't know. It's just throwing it around and having fun with it, and not getting too um not being too heavy about it, not being too, you know, serious about it. Just
Well, to
having
be honest, I don't think
fun.
I've had a conversation with my mum. Like as I'm thinking now, that would be a good place for me to start. Like
It would be a
asking
really good,
her,
yeah.
what was your, almost like you would have done for your interviewees, like what was your experience and what was your mum's experience and what
Mm.
what world were you living in? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. We talked to the women in the film about their mothers, and that actually became quite a feature of the film, because it says a lot about the culture that we have come from,
Mm,
and it says a lot about the taboo nature. And yeah, it's really, yeah, I think, I mean, I started ask my mum sadly died 3 years ago. I didn't get to ask her, and I think she actually had a hysterectomy when she was in her late 40s, so she possibly had a, you know, medical induced menopause. But I've asked my mother-in-law, and she is in her 80s and is really fit and healthy, and she was actually on HRT for a long time. And so, you know, it's really interesting to find out um, about older women.
mm.
They're the living proof of what it is that we are entering into. So yeah, we should ask our elders, definitely.
And what the narrative, like why they made those choices and stuff,
Mm,
because I think the medical system may not have given them a choice or, this is the way to go, or this was the fad at the time, or whatever it is. Now you might have some more options, and you get those options from asking questions and learning, don't you? And
yeah,
being curious and stuff. Have you
yeah.
found any books? And I mean, I'm sure you've, like, other places people can go to find out
Yeah,
people's stories, like really cool places that we can.
definitely. So yesterday I was actually listening to a podcast by My Menopause Doctor, which is a UK doctor. Um, I've just forgotten her actual name, but if you Google My Menopause Doctor podcast, you could find her. She's at the forefront, I think, of, you know, medical management of menopause. But she's really great because she's just really bringing it to the forefront so that GPs across the UK, but hopefully across the world, become much more aware of perimenopause and the symptoms, and take it a bit more seriously, because at the moment many women are put on antidepressants when they really should be treated with hormone replacement therapy or alternative hormone therapies. So, I mean, and there's lots of other therapies. Obviously, you don't have to go down the hormone replacement therapy path, but it's certainly under explored. So she's wonderful. I've dipped in and out of Christiane Northrup's book, The Wisdom of Menopause, because she's an obstetrician gynecologist. So she has a really deep understanding of women's bodies and health. And she's got some lovely holistic approaches to your health and symptoms that you might be experiencing. But she also does, say, look into HRT or look into whatever it is. So she doesn't dismiss anything, which I really like. There's that holistic approach. Then there's a woman called, I've forgotten her name, but she's written a book called The M Word. So it's an Australian doctor. She published it last year. And that's it's a Western medical approach, but it's still worth reading because it's up to date. And I just was reading the hot flushes bit. Just not that I'm having them, but I definitely am hotter at night, and so it's just really great, to keep reading as much as you can, to then reflect back on your own experiences of what you're having and what you might be experiencing that could be related to menopause or perimenopause. We've got a resources page which I can give you at the end of this, if you like, on the She Listens site. And and we're always interested to hear from people if they've got. Actually, another resource is on Facebook, and it's called My Perimenopause Support Group, I think. So I recently joined them when we started our group, Giving Voice to Menopause, and that's a really amazing group. And they're private, and it's a very safe place to go if you are experiencing symptoms that you feel awkward about, or and they have really good advice, and people are very supportive, and it's a really lovely group. So there's a lot out there. I think things are springing up all the time now. It just feels like it was kind of barren a couple of years ago, and now there's like this forest of offerings in the perimenopause world.
But lovely. I think what's beautiful, and you'll definitely have to share about your Facebook group and stuff, but is that idea that people are willing to come together and share, and the benefit of women coming together, storytelling and experiencing shared sort of personal journeys, I guess, and how they've gone through them and what they're using as resources, because we are in a really cool technological age where there are podcasts and Facebook groups that weren't around for our mums, and awesome current resources and stuff, so might as well tap into them.
It's so true. Our parents, our mums, didn't have anything like what we have at our fingertips. So we don't have any excuse really not to dig into all the resources and use all the technology to our advantage. So
tell us about your Facebook group and what you've got on your website and what's next for this film.
Okay, well, we began a possible campaign, which I've never done before, and sort of found myself creating a Facebook group without thinking about it, and then it was really lovely because it was a really lovely positive response, and lots of women have joined, and it's really just been a place of sharing our journey with the film and how we're going. And so the film is in the final stages of post-production, so we're just fine-tuning it, but it's around 25 minutes. It's had some beautiful music composed by Amelia Barden, and it's all women who've made this film. We are looking into launching it on World Menopause Day, which is the 18th of October, but COVID, so probably. Oh, I don't know. We're trying to be positive, and we're aiming for that. So we're currently doing a bit of launchy stuff and looking into all that. We want to make it a really lovely night. with some music potentially and dancing. This is probably not going to happen, but you know. And then the next phase is the design phase of the bigger project, which is to take it into community and take it into corporate or office or, you know, people's lounge rooms. I'm not sure, but it's Sarah and Vanessa have a really rich history in the art space and the facilitation women's workspace, you know. So there's a lot of we have these really long meetings where we just talk for like hours and hours, and it's just incredibly rich, you know. And so I'm really excited about the next phase, which is when we've launched the film, we can really get together and get our heads together and go, well, what, you know, what is our dreaming of this? Like, ideally, I think we just want to reach lots of people, and we want to reach all kinds of diverse communities. We want to get the film captioned in lots of different languages so it can be taken into all different communities. We've, you know, obviously we can't be representative of every group, but we've definitely tried with this film to be as diverse as we could for this initial film. And you know, and within the interviews, there's probably another 3 films we could have, you know, made, because there's a lot of material. But you know, who knows, we might make more films out of those films, that footage we still have, or we might, you know, expand our interviewees and do something else. But ideally we want to just start the conversations, and we want the circles to just spread out as far and wide as they can. And I'm not exactly sure how that looks yet, but you know, it might be that you take the film, you screen it to 20 women, then you have like a little activity, which might be a dance or a craft or just tea and conversation, and then you have a circle that's facilitated where everyone can really, where we hold the space and everyone is allowed to just, you know, share their experience or just listen.
It's awesome. So do you see it? I mean, yeah, it's almost like you listen to the story, but then you tell your own story through this process. Do you see it happening that people might do their own versions of it? Like, you know, you can get a copy of the film and run your own circles, or
Yeah,
bring it to your own
potentially.
workplace, or
Yes. Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the ways we'd like it to, because we don't want it to be reliant on us, because we're all busy and we've all got our own things going on. But it will be about how we hold those. That, I guess it's about keeping the integrity of the film and making sure the women whose stories are so precious, really, that they're used within a safe container. So yeah, so I think ideally we'd like to be able to have this as an offering and go, well, this is how it comes, and you know,
package and maybe a
please present it in
facilitator
this,
guide, or yeah.
yeah, within these guidelines, and that just makes it easier for whoever's presenting it or facilitating. So yeah.
Awesome. So if anyone's listening and wanted to kind of tap into your Facebook group, support your Possible campaign, watch your film, if it's, you know, the time has come and it's already out there and they're listening now, yeah, how do they do all this?
Well, we've got our website is shelistens.community, or our Facebook group is Giving Voice to Menopause. Yeah, they're the 2 best ways, I guess, to get in touch with us. So we'd love to hear from you if you're interested, or if you've got something you'd like to offer, and any resources you think I should add to the page, let me know.
Awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Liv? Like, is there something I really want Penny to ask this and she hasn't?
No, you've done a great job. No, I think you've covered everything. I just think it's just a real privilege to talk to you, Penny. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I just think all the work that you do is excellent too. And I'm just excited, really.
I know. I feel like we're in our own little cycle, and having been connected at school at the start of our womenly cycle, and now we're back at the other end,
Yeah, I know, it's
reconnecting.
amazing.
And yeah, we've reflected on how, yeah, it was a very masculine world we grew up in, and it's just really nice to be able to see that the feminine flowing in, and the storytelling, and the juiciness of community and connection and collaboration coming to the fore are really I'm so grateful we're connected and that you are telling these women's stories and yeah, and you're showing off your gifts and craft. So it's
Uh,
exciting.
I
Um,
did have one thing. Sorry, you just
mm,
reminded me of talking about the feminine. One of the I guess second layers to the project is um, connecting back to earth. So connecting to our bodies, but because we are cyclic beings, that's a connection to the earth. So there's this real desire for the three of us, for the health of our planet and for the healing of the land. So I guess it seems like a long bow, but it really feels like it's evident that the world needs more feminine energy right now, more than ever. And if we can give voice to that feminine energy, that will support it and the planet. I mean, that's another layer.
beautiful. Very aligned with that vision as well. And I actually was going to ask you, which we can still do, is what are the lands that you're meeting on right now? And I mean, for me, it's the Wurundjeri people, and
Yes, it's the Wurundjeri people of the
yeah,
of the Boonwurrung Kulin nations. I've got that right. I'm really terrible because I feel like I am not very good at pronunciation, but yes.
we're
I'm by the Merry Creek, the Merry Merry.
beautiful. Yeah, so wherever you are and listening, to acknowledge the lands and the traditional owners and their connection to country, which I think we're only starting to really appreciate now, has been so rich and um, symbiotic. Really, it's so natural and beautiful. We can learn from that. So, love
Absolutely.
talking to you, Libby. I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and I can't wait to sort of see what emerges from this storytelling.
Thanks so much, Penny. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, so if you've been listening and you enjoyed it, please share it with people in your life because, as we've told about, storytelling and talking is so important. So, if you want to forward the link to them or like and rate it and review it and all those things, which mean that it sticks around a bit longer, that would be awesome.